Three, two. It's easy to talk about the one that you catch. And when you return from fishing, people always want to know how many did you catch? How big was the biggest one? The one that we want to talk about, or we end up probably talking about the most, is the one that got away. So, Seth, tell us about the one that got away on the waters in or around Chattanooga.
There's probably a psychologist that could explain the draw to the one that got away. I think there's something to it. I think every great fishing trip I've ever been on, it does seem sometimes that I keep coming back to that one. And it's the same with local waters. The ones that get away, I think they kind of haunt us, and give us something to look forward to. The ones that are caught, it's done. There's something about that kind of open book, that the chapters aren't all written and you can get back out there and try and find those fish. And boy, do I have a lot of ones that got away chapters, for various species. And, in an area like we live with so much abundance of different water types and species, man, I've got it'd be hard to focus on one in particular. It got away, there's every species I've got one, and just about every river, creek, and impoundment and reservoir we've got. But the ones that haunt me the most, that I keep coming back to, and it's going to be a funny answer for most people, uh, are the long-nosed gar.
Mm,
Uh, you know, we're
mhm.
we're in this long series of TVA dams on the Tennessee River, 12th largest river in the nation. Uh, and it's a breeding ground for just massive gar. And every single summer, I spend a good chunk of my time out there chasing them. And it seems like if there's a repeat offender that keeps getting away, the one that just keeps haunting me and it keeps me just in that agitated state of kind of, gotta get one. It's really, really large, those 60 plus inch
Uh,
long nosed gar. I mean, just monsters. And I hook, several every year, get them to the boat. I mean, they're just such a hard fish to land. They break stuff, they break rods, they break leaders, they, shred flies apart. They're just, it's almost like they're meant not to be caught. And they're all throughout our drainages. So I chase them uh, right below dams and in slow kind of creeks and things like that. But that's the one that I keep coming back to because, I have a soft spot for the gar. It's kind of one of my, uh, I don't know if I'd say it's a hidden talent as much as it is like a weird obsession. But gar, I've just been focused on them for years now. That's the fish that I keep coming back to year after year, trying to land that 60. And we get pretty close sometimes. We land some nice 40, 50-inch fish, but you'll know, anyone who follows us on Instagram or any of that, you'll know when I land the 60 because there's going to be a little bit of a celebration involved with that because that one keeps eluding me.
what kind of flies are you using? I know we're going to get into some of or I hope we're going to get into some of
Yeah.
that, but what are you using for flies for those?
Well, it's an interesting question because, everyone's always, quick to jump at the rope flies or the,
Right.
nylon that's kind of teased out to kind of ensnare and snag their teeth. That game doesn't work with the big ones. It's really good for kind of small and some of your more moderate sized gar. Their teeth are real tight and that those fibers get locked in between there. But as they get bigger, because we're
Oh,
talking fish that are substantially bigger than what the average person thinks about when they think of gar. As they get bigger and their mouths grow, those teeth start to spread out, uh, and those
oh, yeah.
fibers don't lock in there the same way, and just the massive the more mass and weight to the fish when they head shake. And so I've I step away from the rope flies when it comes to the big fish. So we're trying to hook them legit, and sometimes smaller flies than you'd think, and sometimes it's big old musky flies, just whatever we can get to entice them and get them to eat. But hooking them is half the battle, really bony mouths and just a lot of force. They kind of, I think the first thing that drew me to catching the big gar is that because I had caught small ones here or there, random bycatch. But when I started targeting these big gar on the Tennessee River, you hook into that first, substantial 40, 45-inch fish, they start to remind you a lot of some saltwater species, a
Right.
lot of tail walking and somersaults and real big jumps. And then you start mixing in fish that are 15, 20 pounds, 30. It gets real interesting real quick. So uh it's a different game when you're going for the big ones. So we're trying to hook them with kind of more standard streamers and articulated streamers and things like that.
It's no small feat to do that either.
No,
I've caught them on nymphs.
really.
Yeah, the biggest gar that I've ever had in my boat, a lady caught it. It was her first fish ever,
And
and,
landed it on
and
a standard
landed it
leader.
on a standard leader on a size 12 nymph.
Oh man, it almost and there you go. The
Yeah,
thing that drives you crazy,
yeah.
right?
I don't know. There's a picture on the website, but and I don't know, and I'm probably on Instagram too. But I can't remember how long it was. But big, it's a big fish, because she hooked it, and I was tying on a nymph for her son, who they were sharing a boat together, and she said, "Oh, this is a big one," and she had already said, a 14-inch fish looked big to her. And when she
Yeah.
said it was big, I thought, okay, I need to finish this knot up here. And then I just happened to glance at the rod. It was a 6 weight that was, it was, it was bent way more than her big fish, quote unquote, which made me stand up. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's a big gar. It's bigger than any one I've ever caught. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was her first fish. We've got a 20 plus club, and she made it in on her first fish.
Well, and that's a good kind of side point about that species. I think they're pretty, I could talk for hours about how kind of maligned they are for no reason. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what they are and what they eat and what they do to ecosystems. But the majority of these fish, their diet is small bait fish. They're not out there eating trophy fish or anything. They're snacking, especially in our river sheds, on just shad and general kind of bait fish forage that's out there. So yeah, that in one way it's surprising to hear him caught on a nymph,
Yeah.
but more
Yeah.
so for the leader and landing them than
Oh
the nymph
yeah.
itself because they do eat tiny little bugs and we've watched them on the Tennessee River rise up and inspect a little leaf that's just floating down the river, and they're very that's the one thing about a gar and even more so the bigger they get, there's something in the eye, there's it's they see a lot, there's
Yeah.
something when you look into those eyes, that there's that dinosaur brain that's been around for millions, probably hundreds of millions of years. Just there's something there where that fish is very aware of you and everything that's going on around. So they can be challenging for sure.
Challenging is a good word for it, for sure. Let's kick this show off from high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly. This is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Subscribe or follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Text the episode to your friends, and family members, or whoever you fish with, and let them get a little bit of knowledge from what we do here. So, who is our guest today on Southeastern Fly? He's a writer. He's the owner of the Hatch Outfitters in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's an innovative thinker, and I might get into that a little bit later. He's a fishy dude. He's the guest. He was the guest on episode 22, Trip Anticipation in Tannic Water Smallmouth. Welcome back to the podcast, Seth Fields. Seth, thanks for coming back, bud.
Oh, buddy, thank you for having me. I
This
must have
is
done something right the first time around to get the invite again. So thank you.
well, not to go out too far down the rabbit hole, but you're doing a lot of things right. And I can go back to when I first walked in the shop down there on episode 22. Cool little shop, quite a bit more. Uh, product in there than I thought there would be because you were
Yeah.
still relatively new. Now
Hmm.
there's significantly more. You had a bar. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, still do, which for a fly shop, that makes a lot of sense to have a place for people to stand and talk about, just like we're doing here about gar, about whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
Probably there's probably been a lot of world's problems solved around that bar in side conversations that maybe don't even have anything to do with fly fishing. Um,
Yeah.
a
That's
lot of
that's
it does, but some of it probably doesn't. A lot of friendships are made in a shop like that. So the shop is in Chattanooga on Brainerd Road, just before the tunnels,
yeah.
coming out of Brainerd. And I spent a lot of time on Brainerd Road as a young, just between age 17 to about age 20. That used to be the hot spot. And I don't know if you remember this or not. Some folks out there listening probably do, but we would cruise back before video games. You would cruise Brainerd Road in your car, and I was trying to remember what year it was. I think it was the 83 IROC Z, and we would just
Oh
cruise up and down
wow.
that road all evening till my wife got off of work, and she was my girlfriend then. And then I'd go pick her up and we'd go do stuff. But lots of really cool cars, lots of craziness, all kinds of weird tales and some weird people and all that. But
Yeah.
now it's all places are pretty much different than they were now. But you've got a nice little niche down there that wasn't handed to you. I've been watching it probably from afar because I'm about an hour and a half away. But
Yeah.
I watch it. I watch a lot of things and don't comment on it. But what a terrific job you've been doing there.
Well,
And
thank you.
I know it's a lot of hard work. Owning a small business is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
tend to
con-
burn the candle at both ends when it comes to the, the shop and home life and all that. There's a lot going on these days.
Absolutely.
I'm busier than I ever thought I could be, and somehow find the time for it. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been
And then we
great.
we were just talking about my calendar and how bad my calendar is, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining. It's just there's a lot of things to juggle whenever you own a business and all the things that are connected with it. But um, anyway, I think you're doing an excellent job, and I would not say that if I didn't believe it. I was
Thank you.
down there last year for the spring kickoff. I didn't make it this year. I was already booked before I found out what the date was, but I hope to come back next year. I really want to come
Yeah.
back. I enjoyed it a lot last year, so and I know it's getting a little bigger each year. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
our,
the invite's always open. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. Our last conversation when we did trip anticipation and tannic water smallmouth was it included smallies around the UP. It also went into some of your background, and that's a lot of your background and that sort of thing. Uh, but we want to talk more about Chattanooga and the scenic city this time. And me growing up in Chattanooga, I know TVA created a whole lot of fishing opportunities. I'm sure that was part of their plan, but it was probably a very small part of their plan. But you're definitely connected and plugged into that and taking advantage of that. There are lakes and rivers, streams, side channels, below dams, above dams, creeks, just all kinds of cool things around there. But what are some of the just can you go through some of the warm water fishing opportunities around Chattanooga?
yeah, yeah. Almost at times too much water. When my wife and I were looking to relocate from Georgia, kind of had a few places in mind, and it's the geography and all the water here that drew us to Chattanooga. There's just an abundance of water types, like you said. TVA has definitely, uh, been a big reason for all the great water that we have. And sometimes we curse them, sometimes we love them. Water management. Yeah, I don't think you're ever uh, gonna escape people wanting things to change and be different, but for the most part they've created essentially a mostly a warm water paradise for fishing. not just fly fishing. But yeah, I mean, I think when I first got here, it was more fishing the reservoirs, the big lakes, and trying to find those trophy bass that are in those, and the gar, and some other things on the lakes. But that's probably what's most known about Chattanooga is, the Lake Chickamauga fishing. It's been listed as one of the top bass lakes in the country, so that one gets a lot of fame, and maybe deservedly so. But uh, for me, it's the bigger system that I get really excited about. We've got, like you said, so many of these tributaries pouring into the lakes, and into the big river, that are just, brimming with like possibility. There's one of my favorite things in our region is these deep gorges, these creeks that meander up these gorges that cut through the landscape. It's we're kind of set on like a little valley with a plateau and some ridges all around it. Got these beautiful meandering crystal clear water creeks that kind of snake up and down these deep, rocky gorges with boulders strewn through them and just great smallmouth. And that's to me like summer. That's what I want to do. And it's funny because, there's an abundance of these creeks, handfuls of them, from some of the ones that are more notable that we stock with trout seasonally and fish for smallmouth during the summer months, like North Chickamauga Creek and Big Soddy Creek. But, for the most part, people only know very small sections of those creeks. You know, I I myself have tried my best to hike as far up as I could, Norchick in the summers. And you find that there's the smallmouth fishing just gets better and better the further you go. It's almost like there's the human footprint just disappears, and I'd maybe have hiked up about 5 miles in one day and then 5 miles back out, kind of close to
Yeah.
10-mile days. And it just kept getting better. I never wanted to leave. And there's just so much of that to explore because I don't know anybody who's been up to mile 6 and 7 and 8, and who knows what's up there. So for people who kind of have the gumption and like the desire to like really find some untouched great smallmouth water, you can get in some of these creeks and just hike until your legs fall off. And summertime, that's throwing some poppers and some frog patterns, throwing some damselflies, throwing a lot of streamers. I mean, there's just that's a real fun way to fish, to on some of these little tributary streams. So that's like one of the things I think is most unique about Chattanooga is it's hard to find not only streams that look and fish like that, but that there's so many of them. Because I've named two, but there's I can think of at least 7 or 8 like that are just begging people to go out and explore them. So the creeks kind of are one of the first things I think are kind of unique to the area. Uh, the dams, that's kind of the polar opposite. We've gone from these meandering creeks that offer this like wild scenic beauty to, right up underneath Chickamauga Dam, Nickajack Dam, Watts Bar Dam, some of our local dams that are just like this terminus, this stopping point for bait fish and sport fish and everything in between to just stack up, and it's not as easy as shooting fish in a barrel. A
Yeah.
lot of times it requires a boat. It's definitely, it's been interesting to watch the boat culture really grow since I've been here, and since the shop has started up. I mean, you know, I feel like maybe 10 years ago, if you went out below any of these dams and saw a fly rod out there, it might have been a pretty peculiar sight, something
Yeah.
people would be like, "Oh wow, look at that." Nowadays you can't escape it. If you choose the right day, you might see 4 or 5, 6, 7 boats out there all throwing fly rods, and then people on the banks throwing fly rods, and the culture is just like below these impoundments, these dams is like really just like blown up, and it's a really interesting fishery because we're fishing for, smallmouth bass, striped bass, largemouth, spotted bass, most of your kind of black bass species, but then you mix in, the white bass as well. Then you mix in like the skipjack, which,
Oh, one of my
nicknamed the
favorites.
Tennessee tarpon,
Yep.
and rightly so, a really fun fish that shows up in abundance and just provides like great fishing year round. Maybe even in between, if you're out fishing for smallmouth or something, the fishing gets tough. You go find a skipjack and they'll bring a smile back to your face, and you
They
can,
sure do.
yeah, that, there's all those kind of side species. There's the carp are out there as well, and the drum that are running around, but that's kind of big deep water game. So we're throwing a lot of sinking lines and playing a little more technical version of fly fishing, for warm water species out there. The gar are also in those areas like we discussed earlier. Just an abundance of species. There's birds diving, there's shad exploding in the air from white bass, and it's just there's a lot happening at those dams at any given day. And so you've got that like really interesting dichotomy of like wild scenic, these man-made industrial areas, and then a lot of stuff in between, our bigger tributaries that hold trout, some of our tailwaters, Hiawassee River and the Elk River, and others that provide our kind of year-round trout fishing experience for a lot of people. The Hiawassee is kind of known throughout the Southeast, and it's a big scenic river, provides miles and miles of wet wading, and wading opportunities for people. And then, we've got other ones like the elk that are a little more boat centric. There's definitely access points to wade in, but really one that you need like a watercraft to really get to enjoy that river and really get after some fish on it. So yeah, it's kind of a mix of all these things that just drew me to the area. But the one that I can't, say enough about is the flats fishing. That's I've
Mm.
already been out there a couple times this year. We're here, rolling into May soon, and the carp are out on these vast kind of shallow freshwater flats, and we're out there pulling and wading around for them. It's just a whole other, type of fishing for the area that's a little more, keep it close to the chest in terms of
Right.
where and how to find those fish, because the spots are somewhat limited. But it's a lot of fun. I don't know. I'm sure you've done some carp fishing on the flats. If
No,
For someone
nothing.
like me with a saltwater
Yeah.
kind of background, it really scratches that itch of really, really challenging fishing, that I enjoy a lot. So
It,
that's
it's
probably
it's a lot like saltwater, except the saltwater fish, if you find them, they'll normally eat,
yeah,
and like
yeah, yeah,
hard, hard to find, easy to catch.
yeah,
Carp
for
carp
sure.
are sometimes hard to find and almost always hard to catch. So it's
Yeah,
it's a pretty technical species to go after,
absolutely.
unless it's cicada season. Then all bets are off, and that only comes around so often. So uh, I tell you,
Yeah,
the
you
Hiawassee was one that you mentioned was the Hiawassee. I don't think there's a more scenic, pretty river in Tennessee than the Hiawassee. I
yeah.
really don't. I've been on it a whole lot, and just
It's impressive.
it is,
It's an
isn't it?
impressive river. I recall the first time I saw it. It's almost, it's almost perplexing to when you come around the bend and you see that view of that river and just how
Yes.
massive and rocky and beautiful. Yeah, that one's special for sure.
And the crazy thing about that is when it looks like, oh gosh, there's a ton of people here, and I'm talking about in the spring, early
Yeah,
spring, when it's just anglers out there for, whatever, however they decide to apply their craft. It looks really busy, but when you get out there, it's so wide that a lot of times other people you could see them, but they never come into play.
yeah.
That's the
It
one
it
of the things I really like about it.
Yeah, it absorbs a lot of angling pressure
Yeah,
because
it
you can
does.
always hike and or not even hike, but just walk away from the crowds. And
Yeah,
it's real pockety. It's got all these shoals built into it that, it you could spend a whole day fishing, across and back and forth on that river. So it's got plenty of room to absorb the angling pressure and let people kind of spread out, even when there's a lot of people.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've floated it before, and I think it was my first boat. I'm pretty sure it's my first boat that I had. I beat that poor boat to death, and I would love to take someone else's boat down it again. That's this it can punish you if you miss the line by up there. If you miss it by a foot, you're going to do some. You can do some damage. You don't always, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
The
did some damage, or I felt like I did to that boat.
rafts are
Yeah,
really nice for that water, a little more forgiving
yeah,
than a fiberglass or wooden drift boat or something that it's going to get beat up on those rocks. It's definitely known as a technical fishery, and you definitely have to deal with the dam flows, and that's part of what we do at the shop is helping people understand where to get in those rivers, when to fish them, what those different generations from the
yeah,
dam mean and look like, and making sure people are safe.
yeah. When to get out?
That's yeah, that's definitely like something with the Hiawassee is you gotta
Yeah,
you gotta know when and where to be
yeah.
to both be successful and to be safe. But it's a big, beautiful river.
It sure
We're
is.
lucky to have it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours probably for me to get there. But still, lots of fun. It's got some hiking around it too. I'm not trying to sell the Hiawassee here. I'm just thinking it's really a
Yeah,
nice place to be. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but so the other night, you and I were talking. Quickly, we had a quick discussion, and you mentioned Southern Adventures on the Fly, which I guess is going to be a TV show.
That's
Or
what they're telling me.
so how in the world did you get wrangled into a TV show?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of process, and I'm still in some ways wrapping my head around it as well. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I'm at the shop one day, just like any other day, young man walks in. I say young man because he's my age and I consider myself a young man. But it starts browsing the rod rack as people do, and I go over to talk to him, and he was explaining to me that he had just been out west, and that he was filming a TV show, and that it just looked like a lot of fun. They did some fly fishing out there, and he was like, I think I want to get, my first fly rod.
Oh,
Uh, and I'm helping him out, and other customers are coming in, and music's playing, and there might be one or two people having a beer, and soon the conversation turns from fly rods to he's like, what is this place? Like what's going on here? And I'm like, just kind of explain that this is like my dream shop. I think that's what we did with the shop, and tried to just make it the shop I'd want to shop at,
yeah.
and having a good vibe there all the time. And he's just picking up on that. And I was asking more about the TV show. He's like, yeah, we got this show, a guy named Danny Pruitt that we take all over the country and get him into these you pretty much get him in over his head in fishing scenarios. Danny's a great guy. The show that they were filming is called The Real American Road Trip. It's currently on Waypoint TV.
Mm.
And the gentleman that I was talking to, that's Adam Dukes. He's the producer, which I didn't know at the time, but he's telling me about this show and how Danny, they love to put him in scenarios where he's outgunned. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's just kind of a fun show where this guy just kind of figures it out, and uh, he's talking about all the challenging fishing they've done. They went to Montana. They were netting mullet on the Florida coast and just any and everything all over the country. And I was like, man, you should try and get him to catch a muskie on the fly. And he was like, one, like, what's a muskie?
Yeah,
And then I
right.
had to explain the whole, fish of 10,000 cast and how difficult it was. And we just got talking, and just one thing led to another. He kind of fell in love with the shop, and he was like, hey, I think we should do an episode for the Real American Road Trip where you take Danny muskie fishing. And so we filmed that episode, and it aired in season 1 of that show, which they're filming season 2 now. And I think just through the process of filming that, and uh, Adam and the guys from the production crew like spending time in the shop, they started to become regulars, and just stopping by for a beer at first, and then getting more and more into fishing, and just I think they just kind of fell in love with the shop and a bit of the culture that's happening in Chattanooga. And that's when he, about a few months later, kind of came to me with a little spark in his smile, and I was like,
No,
he started pitching this idea, like, I think we should make a TV show out of the fly shop. And you know, at first I was kind of like, yeah, that's cool, but I didn't know how serious he was. And he kept coming back week after week, like, hey, I think this needs to happen. There's something unique happening in Chattanooga, and with the whole culture here, and the abundance of fishing that we have. And so, yeah, I mean, it took a little convincing, but long story short, we're kind of in the throes of filming season 1 now.
nice.
And just taking it day by day, finding adventures as they come, and interesting people that come into the shop, and maybe trying to spin an episode out of that, and gearing people up for adventures outside of Chattanooga, whether they're going to the coast or going to the Bahamas for bonefish, or it's a little bit of the format's a little loose, but the the identity of the show is it all starts at the fly shop and the adventures that kind of branch out from it. And we're gonna, take people and show them some of our fisheries, and go out and chase, some interesting things, like try and break the standard format for a TV show, and especially one, for fly fishing, where it's that storyline's been dominated by, epic saltwater and trout
Yeah.
fishing for so long. And we just want to show a different side of fly fishing, show people that it doesn't have to be always the far-flung epic adventures, but maybe something a little closer to home, and finding success in whatever way, gets you excited, whether it's carp flats, or just throwing poppers for bass, or whatever it may be, striped bass below dams. I mean, just kind of showing people a different side of fly fishing.
That's kind of what we've been doing here is going. We do some things outside of the Southeast, don't get me wrong, but probably the majority of our episodes are about somewhere fishing in the Southeast. And you're right,
Mhm.
you don't have to go to Argentina or Patagonia or, Montana.
True.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, because there's some of those places I want to go and haven't been yet. But, I was telling somebody the other day, there's a creek that I will fish in the next month or two that I've never fished before, that's right over here about a mile and a half from my house, that I just haven't been to.
Yeah,
My goal is to fish that creek this year.
I
And
love
that's,
that.
yeah. So that's, hey, whenever I get home from the river, I might dump the boat in the garage and take off again, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I find that that stuff is really eye-opening for people. It's funny you mentioned that. I've got a creek very much kind of in the same vein locally here. I live in Harrison, Tennessee, and
Mm-hmm.
I probably passed over it a thousand times, just errands here and there. And a couple times I started to take my 3 weight in there, and it's, all day long, just dry fly fishing and little sunfish
Yeah.
coming up and eating dry flies, and bass eating poppers. And, uh, you know, I get why people are drawn to those kind of those game fish, and the really beautiful trout waters and things like that. But I
Oh
think most
yeah.
people would be surprised to know how much fun they could have in a local creek or a local pond. And don't get me wrong, we're gonna showcase some pretty epic adventures. Heading down to the Keys with the camera crew in June, and uh, it's not all going to be Chattanooga based, but it's going to be the heart and soul of the show is going to be finding finding those warm water opportunities, and some trout stuff as well. And hopefully we get to kick season one off with some cicada fishing. So
Oh, that'd be
that
good.
yeah, that's going to be an interesting development
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. Um, I want to shift gears back to the dam just a minute. So when I was there in
Yeah.
Chattanooga growing up, below dam was a place that I would go sit and think. Right, I didn't fish there. I don't think I ever fished there right below the dam. I fished
Mhm.
above the dam some, but I never really fished below the dam. I fished Nickajack Dam below the dam and above the dam. Never fished Watts Bar. Never did go up there. But
Mhm.
your shop and the in Chickamauga Dam kind of seem to go hand in hand as far as the clientele that frequent both. So if someone, let's take it from the perspective of someone that is new to Chattanooga or within a day's drive to Chattanooga, or maybe they've just come to spend time in Chattanooga for whatever reason. Uh, what are just some of the things that make fly fishing below Chickamauga Dam uh, special?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the natural cycles, right? There's always something going on out there. There's seasonal pushes of certain fish running upstream, a lot of them to spawn and things like that. But these cycles that keep happening, striped bass in the spring and striped bass in the fall, and the skipjack run upstream, the white bass, the smallmouth get on structure, and there's always a seasonal kind of cycle aspect to it. And again, you know, the culture now out there, there's so many guys with fly rods and gals with fly rods that are on both the wading areas and in boats out there in the main river. But it's it's proximity. It's really close to the shop and to the city center. So it doesn't take long to get there. And there's some areas that you can actually wade fish because it's a big river, and these dams, a lot of riprap walls and areas that are really kind of inaccessible to, especially to the fly rod angler, who needs room to back cast. But we've got some areas out there that people can actually fly fish, and you'll see them out there, and almost sometimes it looks like combat fishing. You'll see people kind of stacked up along certain wading areas with fly rods in hand. But uh, no matter what the season, and whether you're in the boat or on the bank, like one big thing is the shad.
Mm.
The threadfin shad are kind of the heartbeat of most of the dams. There's other species of bait fish as well that garner the attention of all the predator fish that we want to catch. But the shad, they show up, and about this time of year we get a good shad spawn, and all of a sudden there's a little shad fry in the water, and things just start exploding like fireworks. The fish are all keyed in on that. And so it's really about, just having a little heavier tippet, having the gear to maybe tangle with some of these warm water species, which typically, requires 6 weight or something with a little more butt to it. An 8 weight is kind of ideal. Um, but you can still just walk out there with a 5 weight rod, and you might find a fish that might put that rod to the test in terms of its break strength. people luck into stripers all the time and things like that. But it just there's always something happening at the dam, and whether it's the people, the fishing, it's just it's almost kind of it's a spectacle. It's good
Yeah.
people watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always something going on, and we don't always get along with each other. Sometimes there's too many boats, and sometimes, the guys on the bank and the guys in the boats, there's a little bit of everyone's vying for what's happening, getting the attention of the fish that are keyed in. But
So they
it's
can,
all in good fun, and it's a fun place to be just about any afternoon.
you might see a kerfuffle out there from time to time, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
there's been a few shouting matches.
Yeah.
Nothing too bad, but there's definitely been a few times where we've butted heads with people, and it's just, again, it's not the norm. Most of the time it's just people
Yeah.
out there fishing, having a good time. But yeah, there's been a few moments.
What would you watch out for there? What would you need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, one thing is understanding how powerful
Mm,
these dams are. The the river gradient changes a lot. Like I said, there's a few areas you can wade fish, but otherwise, a lot of depth and a lot of flow.
yeah.
And so just watching out for that and making sure that you don't step off a rock eddy, into or some type of jetty or wing wall. And you could find yourself in high water pretty quick. But no, it's otherwise a pretty easy fishery to approach in terms of getting out there and giving it a try.
What do you think the right fly is for somebody that's coming in from out of town? And I know that timing, time of
Yeah,
year, that sort of thing's a little different. And they would need to probably get to the shop and find something in the bins at someone's direction there. But
yeah.
what what's a
It th
what's a good starting point?
there's there's kind of for me, two main flies for the Tennessee River in general, and especially below Chickamauga Dam. Again, the shad,
Mm,
and we got a few flies to imitate those smaller threadfin shad that the fish key in on. Whether it's like Henry Cohen's something else,
yeah,
great little synthetic threadfin shad fly. We fish a lot of, you could probably do pretty well with the Clouser minnow most days,
yeah,
chartreuse and white, as the saying goes, if it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use.
right,
But general kind of shad patterns like that are gonna be like part one. Part two is crawfish,
yeah,
or a
okay.
lot of people call them crayfish. I grew up, we call them crawdads where I come from in South Carolina. But
That's why I was gonna say you're from the Carolinas, aren't you?
yeah, yeah, the crawfish patterns can be a big part of the diet of at least the smallmouth and some of the fish that kind of hang on structure on the bottom of the rivers. And having one that's heavy enough to get down through all that flow, and you know how and where you fish it, that's up to interpretation. I know people who will fish floating lines with big heavy crawdads that they almost use the fly line as kind of an indicator to what's
Ah,
going on down below.
right.
Uh, and then, a lot of people have the style of throwing heavier sinking lines and things, and trying to scoot those flies along the bottom of the river. And so, no matter how you fish it, crawfish are always on the menu. So between shad and crawfish, those are your two hot flies.
What's the depth out there below the dam? And I know it varies, and
Sure, yeah.
pick a generation and
Yeah,
tell me.
right at the turbines, which is kind of a dangerous area. It's not somewhere that we encourage people to be, but at times when the flows are really low, you can kind of get pretty close to the generation there, and you'll find 20 plus foot depths there. Probably some areas that
Oh
edge up
wow.
towards 30 feet.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to effectively fish that with a fly rod.
Yeah.
Um, and then you'll find, 100 foot downstream, all of a sudden it starts to shallow up. And I'd say the general or the average depth below Chickamauga Dam on the Tennessee River is probably I'd say about 10 foot.
That's it,
Seems to
huh?
be pretty standard. And there'll be rocky shoals that are naturally there in the river that are kind of outside the dredged up pathway of commercial boat traffic,
Uh-huh.
where they've allowed these eddies to or these rocky outcrops to stay in the riverbed, and they might bring the height or the depth of the water up to only about 4 or 5 foot in certain flows. So it really, you do have points where it shallows up a good bit, and you'll know where those are if you're throwing sinking line around. You'll find those rocky outcrops pretty quickly, but there's a lot of
Right.
fish that stick to that structure. So, but yeah, about 10 foot on average.
I would have thought it'd been a lot deeper than that just because of the barge traffic, but
Yeah, yeah. I
I'm
think in most of the channels and the dredged out stuff, as you get further downstream, you'll probably find a lot of like 14 foot
yeah, yeah.
stuff like that. But
We, we were staying, where was that? Below the Ojati Bridge, there's a hotel there. I can't remember then which one it is, but it's got a restaurant in it and all that. And we were staying on the riverside. I don't remember why we were even down there, something for my wife. And I was watching, of course, the morning. Whenever I woke up in the morning, I opened the curtains as I was watching out in the river and saw some fish in the jumps, like bait, hitting bait fish and jumping up that way down there in gulls. The whole thing
yeah,
that you really just explained earlier.
yeah,
And I thought, wow, that's a long way from the dam. I don't know how many miles that is. It seems like it's probably 10 miles, but it may not be. But we, right down there below town and just fish just right in front of the hotel, just out there gobbling on what looked like shad. I don't know what they were. It was
yeah,
probably a little far for me to see. But yeah, I mean, there's fish all the way down there doing kind of what you were talking about earlier, gulls and fish
yeah.
jumping and all that. So it's really,
Yeah, it's not always, right at the dam. It usually is. But you'll find all throughout, if you were to just look at Nickajack Dam or Nickajack Lake,
hmm
the area below Chickamauga Dam, yeah, you've got the dam at the head that kind of provides this, again, this terminus, this ending point where things seem to gather. It's kind of
right.
their natural tendency to run upstream. They're obstructed, and so they inhabit that area. But then as you flow down through the river system, the the structure changes. You start getting less riprap, more logs, more islands, and things like
Yeah,
that. And then eventually it dumps into the slow bodies of water that we would mostly consider the lakes.
right.
And so you just have all this major habitat type going through there, and there's fish all throughout. I I still think one of the best smallmouth I've ever seen was caught so many miles downstream from the dam, or that area, that it kind of surprised me. But they're all throughout there, and they'll it's for certain species like a striped bass that swim from one dam to another is really nothing.
Yeah, right.
It's a day's jog for a fish like that. I know back home in South Carolina, I grew up around the Edisto River, which is a unobstructed tannic river that runs all the way to the coast of South Carolina. And we're probably 100+ miles upstream, and here'd be the striped bass swimming, and they'd be there one day and not the next. And you know fish like that use these impoundments and these reservoirs as just kind of corridors, and you never really know where they're going to be one day to the next with certain species.
Totally agree with that. And I had commented uh the buffalo doing the same thing. Here
Yeah.
one minute, gone the next. Like be thousands in the river one day, and have a trip the next day and like, we are going to kill them today, man, it's going to be good. And you get down there, there's exactly zero in the
Yeah,
river.
yeah. And those that's more of those cycles I was talking
Hmm.
about that if anything, just keep it real interesting.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fun if every day was a banner day. Just the other day we kind of getting out on our carp flats early just to see like, hey, what's going on? And we found, a 2, 3 acre area that just had hundreds
Oh
of
wow.
carp that were spawning, and
Yeah.
some were spawning, some were just cruising around. And just a banner day, the ability to catch, 5, 6, 7 carp in one day. And that's a lot of getting to see your backing and having a lot of fun. And then I think one of the guys who works for me that was with me that day went back a few days later and he's like, there was a couple fish there,
Yeah. Yep.
and it's a completely
Exactly.
changed scenario. So sometimes you got to take the good when you can get it.
Oh yeah.
Enjoy the cycles. It provides like something to always look forward to, and a challenge.
Yeah. Very often people get on the boat and say, what's the record in one day? I'm like, oh, don't do that. Let's don't even talk. Oh gosh, we got to know. I'm like, it's in the
Yeah,
hundreds, and
yeah,
they just
yeah.
you can see it. They're just if they've been fishing for a little while and maybe have caught 4 or 5 fish they've been on for a little bit, and they ask that question. I'm just like, I don't even want to answer that because it is that way.
Sure. And
And
that can be, I guess, that way with any fishing.
oh
You
yeah,
have up days and down days. But then yeah, you mix in these entangled watersheds where they could be in the lake one day or up a
yeah,
creek or up a big river and down deep in the lake. I mean, you never know what you're going to find. So, just get out there and start hunting
yeah.
for those cycles, and every once in a while you get lucky.
That does go back to that saying: if you don't know, you don't know if you don't go.
Oh yeah,
You just don't.
absolutely.
You're just out there guessing.
Yeah.
So
And that's kind of been a theme for me. Uh, just getting to know all these watersheds because we've been here in Chattanooga for almost 7 years now. So not a long time.
yeah,
And it's so much water. It's one of those places where, the shop's always closed on Monday. That's kind of our fun day to get out there and get in touch and connected to these watersheds, and also to get knowledge about what to tell people's working here and there. But sometimes, man, when that alarm goes off on Monday morning, I still
oh,
haven't made my mind up on where I'm gonna go fish. Is it this or that? Is it muskie? Is it striper? It's for someone with a little bit of ADHD brain like me, it can be a bit of a challenge to kind of pick this place apart because it's just so much water.
that's that reminds me of a friend of mine. I texted him one day and I said, "You want to fish tomorrow?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, Just bring a rod and maybe some snacks." He's like, "Okay." Gets in the truck and goes, "Where are we going?" I mean, same thing. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna go here." Oh, okay, cool. You know. And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, I'm glad I decided that. Whenever I got up this morning, he didn't ask yesterday because I don't think I would have had an answer.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have,
Yeah, it really is.
having that abundance of, because I've lived in a lot of places that are very limited on having water in general,
Yeah.
just you live in an area that maybe there's only small creeks, and maybe it's swampy like where I grew up. There's a lot of kind of tannic swamp water. There there are special places like this that I don't think you find too many areas that give you all this water type.
I'll tell you the question that I've answered a couple of times from folks out west, and specifically in Colorado, because everybody that listens to this knows that I spent some time out there lately. And, they want to know what's your fishing season. I'm like, if it's not frozen over, it's fair game.
Yeah.
But
And
they
if
have out there fishing more fishing seasons, meaning
yeah.
too cold to go.
Yeah,
wind blowing 50 miles an hour and it's, 20 degrees. And they do have some open waters below dams, some dams and stuff like that. But for the most part, their season is very short compared to our seasons.
sure. Yeah. I
So
mean,
you're
we're
right.
year round
Yeah.
fishing.
Yeah.
And even in the coldest months, I feel fortunate that we have such a variety of species because again, winter months, that's pretty much when we dedicate a lot of time to muskie and
Yeah.
most of the warm water fishing's kind of gone downhill at that point. So we strap into that bull and try and ride 8 seconds. That's a whole other topic, the musky fishing,
Yeah.
which not directly in the Chattanooga area, but we're lucky to have a few places in either direction, an hour and a half here, 2 hours that way, where we can chase muskie in the winter,
Yeah. Exactly.
striped bass on the lakes in the winter. So it never really shuts down for us, it just changes gears from one cycle to the next.
Yeah. So let's go back just a minute. I want to talk just a
Yeah.
minute and thinking about the person visiting for a couple of days. Where's a great place to eat down there now? I know that rib and loin used to be really good.
Yeah,
Uh,
Ribbon Loin's just down the road there in
yeah,
Brainerd.
yeah.
So we've had them cater some events, like our annual tournament. We've had
Oh,
them
really? I
cater
didn't. Okay.
before. So they're still in operation. Chattanooga's kind of had this huge boom, obviously, in the last 10 years, and uh, it's brought with it a lot of good restaurants. There's a lot of people would be mad at me if I don't name the right one, but you shouldn't go hungry here for sure. It just depends on what your poison is, whether you want a really good burger from somewhere like Tremont Tavern or you could probably go over to Main Street Meats and have one of the best burgers of your life. But yeah, we got a little bit of everything here. Champy's is a local favorite that's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
not to be missed if you want some good fried chicken as well. Uh, really good barbecue spots here and there. Great Mexican food. I mean, yeah, we're not going hungry.
No, no. I tell you what, there was this little place off of Shallowford Road, maybe a little closer to the tunnels, between 153 uh, going back toward town. And this was a long time ago, probably
Mm,
before you ever thought of the word Chattanooga. But it was a little place that was just in an old parking lot. And he had a little trailer out there and a big old, like four ricks of wood and a smoker and the best barbecue. It was so good. So I've always kind of sought out those places. I don't think anyone will ever be as good as that one was in my mind.
yeah,
And
sure.
and maybe I was really hungry those days that I went there, but it was folded up in that kind of clearish white plastic
Oh
or
yeah.
paper and stuff, and he
Uh-huh.
little thing of fries on the side, a big glass of sweet tea, and a styrofoam cup, and all that in a the food in a bag with a couple of napkins in it, and oh, it was so good. There's some some of the best food down there when I was growing up, and I'm sure it's probably just getting better with the competition
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah. And like just right down the street from the shop, some people, a Guatemalan family have opened up like a little food truck
Oh
just
yeah.
down the way from us, and so we're spoiled all the time now with just an abundance of tacos and tortas and just
Oh, nice.
the food truck culture is another thing that's kind of
Yeah.
popped up all over Chattanooga. So you see them everywhere, and yeah, that taco truck has become, let's just say, like, we know each other on first name basis. Yeah, we've had a lot of taco days at the shop.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a taco truck just up the road that I just almost swerved into today. We took the dogs for a bath and I was coming back through. I was thinking now would be a great time to get that. Just some guy, an entrepreneur out there just
Hmm.
making a go at it, really. But
Yeah.
and what about places to stay? Where would you say people might want to stay?
Phew. Uh, you know, there's an abundance of like the Airbnb type scenarios. Even one of my good friends who used to own the building that we're in, he's got Airbnbs, and that's a big part of
Mhm.
the ease of being able to stay in the city now without, springing for a hotel. That's usually, I feel like, the way people check places now, like, can I stay in an Airbnb, find something real unique? The city center is obviously going to have, all your major hotels, but that's a good question in terms of where to direct people to stay. Not something I've gotten the request for a ton.
Hey,
Um,
there's some nice places down around Suck Creek in that area on the river.
yeah.
There's a few down there, and there's
Hmm.
supposed to be a new place I think on Lookout Mountain starting up. That's kind of a higher end hotel like place where you can stay multiple days. I can't remember the name of
Yeah.
that. Uh, and we were over toward the Hiawassee. There's some cabins and stuff over there too. But I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
about in the immediate Chattanooga area other than here and there. There's some Airbnbs and VRBOs and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Yeah. There's even even a hostel downtown and
is
everything,
there really?
So if you wanted to stay on the cheap, there's options for sure. But yeah, Airbnbs have kind of taken over the cityscape, so it's not hard to find a place, and a cool place where you're like right in the heart of all the restaurants and bars, if that's what you wish. But yeah, if you want to step outside of the city limits, there's always a few cabins
Oh
hidden
yeah.
here or there. I know when my wife and I got married here in Chattanooga, actually, 11 years ago, before we ever lived here, we got married in this region.
Oh
And,
wow.
we took all our family, we rented a bunch of cabins over in Trenton, Georgia, just over the
Yeah.
Georgia line,
Yeah.
and, up near Cloudland Canyon State Park. And there's a lot of like camping options too, especially attached to certain waterways. There's especially like Tellico River system. There's a bunch of
Hmm.
campsites there, and so if people want to rough it a little bit, there's always kind of campsite options in a lot of these Forest Service areas. And
What is the name of the gosh? Oh, Chester Frost.
yeah,
Chester
Chester
Frost Park.
Frost.
There is a
Hmm.
camping area up there. I met my
Yeah,
wife.
Harrison Bay State Park
Harrison
as
Bay's
well.
got one. Yeah. I
Yeah.
met my wife at Chester Frost Park at the beach there at the
Oh,
lake.
really?
Yeah. Yep. She probably wishes she didn't go there that day, but she did. So,
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we have our weekend routine, which is, hopping on the pontoon and cruising the lake. And we've got friends that live in Hicks, and we'll pick them up at Chester Frost Beach or hang out over there
yeah.
and kind of cruise the lake and everything. And yeah, it's a cool area.
Yeah, it
But yeah,
is.
you've got all the state parks within Chickamauga Lake that offer, hookup sites for RVs, stuff like that. I think there's even some like primitive campsites on a lot of those. So yeah, there's always something.
There's plenty of places to stay there and goes right along with plenty of water to fish.
Yeah,
So before we close this thing out, I've got one more question
sure.
that I want to ask, and it is, what is the one question that I didn't ask about fly fishing Chattanooga, the scenic city area, that I should have asked?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we obviously spent a lot of time talking about the warm water fishing. But a question we probably get more than anything is are there kind of the cold water trout opportunities right here in Chattanooga? Because it's a little bit of a deceiving landscape. A lot of people drive in, they see the ridge, the
Yep.
mountaintops and everything, and they assume that we're, in an area of elevation, but it's actually a pretty low elevation area. It's a little misleading, but it is big and scenic. Um, but we do have a couple trout options that you know a lot of visiting anglers and both residents alike enjoy a lot. And those are creeks that we stock with help with TWRA. We actually use volunteers to stock those creeks, and it's a really fun process. We everyone shows up on stocking day with backpacks and waders on, and it's a lot of passing of buckets and all that. And it's a lot of sweat and hard work that goes into creating these
Yes.
fisheries and essentially transforming small sections of these river gorges into great little trout fishing areas. And so from about October till about May or June, you can fish for trout, right here in Hamilton County. And it's not in my mind, it's not like a standard kind of like put and take trout areas because it's, so scenic, it's so pretty, the water's so clear, the fish will really kind of key in on some bugs and things like that. So you can fish dry flies, you can fish nymphs, you can throw streamers. So we've got that. That's a newer thing in the last 3 or 4 years that we've been doing with Tennessee Wildlife, where again, it was just an idea that we threw at them at one point about having more local waters, and it just provides the shop with some ability to teach people fly fishing. We do a lot of like fly fishing 101 kind of
Yeah.
3 hour instructional wade trips on those rivers to kind of get people dialed in and teach them what fly fishing for trout's all about. And so uh, if people maybe want to try something a little different from the warm water, we do have those cold water options, and they can be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't hit on that much. Maybe we need to come back around and do some more of that
Yeah,
the next time.
but yeah, so the other thing I'd say is the cicada year. That's
Yeah.
we're expecting this region for a few of our areas to get hit pretty hard with the cicadas, and when that happens, it's all hands on deck. It's going to be hard not to close the shop because I
Yeah.
know I'm going to want to be out there fishing. And so we're hoping that both some of our trout streams and our carp flats and our bassier kind of warm water areas get hit with the cicada hatch this year.
I think
And
they
I think
will. I think
yeah,
it's
it's going to
gonna
be a good
happen.
time.
Yeah. I booked every day that I've got open is filled. Now I'm just
Right.
helping other people get out with other people. So
Yeah.
everybody's anticipating it. We'll see how it goes. If it's
Yeah.
anything like last time, it'll be epic. That's
Yeah.
all I can say. True epic. You,
Yeah, it's one of those rare opportunities, where you get to watch fish that are otherwise maybe you don't even know they're there,
that's a
but
fact.
everything starts keying in.
Yes.
And when it happens, it's magic. We
Yes.
had some of that with the previous Brood X hatch that happened a couple years back. Um, it'll show
Yeah.
you how many fish are in the water.
Yeah, it'd break your heart
Yeah.
in a way because you'll think, maybe, yeah, maybe there's an 18 incher here, and all of a sudden a 25 incher rolls up and eats it. You're like, dang, I didn't know that fish was here
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Never would have
Hmm.
thought it.
Hmm. But
Well, let's
yeah.
go ahead and close this thing out. What do you say?
Yeah, sounds good, David. Thank you.
All right. Share the podcast with your friends and your fishing partners. Subscribe or follow so you'll be the first to know whenever episode drops. Text it to a friend. Text these episodes to a friend and let them know that you heard it on Southeastern Fly. If you find value in the podcast and things we do here, stop by Southeastern Fly, click on the store, and just make a purchase of a hat or a T-shirt. We'll send you a Southeastern Fly podcast decal too. Who is our guest today on Southeastern Fly? He's the owner of the Hatch Outfitters in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Like I said before, he's an innovative thinker, and I think you see that came through in the discussion. You can find him at the hatchoutfitters.com. Follow him on Instagram. In the shop, you can find him there for sure. You can find him on the waters in and around Chattanooga. Seth, thank you again for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, David.
All right, you just listened to Seth Fields, Fishing the Scenic City on Southeastern Fly. See you next time.